The moment you stop settling rarely looks the way people imagine it does. It usually isn't dramatic. There isn't always a big confrontation. You don't always wake up one morning feeling incredibly confident, ready to walk away from everything that no longer serves you. Most of the time, it happens quietly, in a completely ordinary moment. A moment that, from the outside, doesn't look significant at all. Maybe you're sitting alone with your morning coffee. Maybe you're driving home after another disappointing conversation. Maybe you're lying awake at night, replaying the same cycle you've replayed 100 times before. And then something inside you becomes still, not angry, not resentful, just clear. For so long, you've been negotiating with yourself, making excuses, telling yourself that maybe they're trying their best, maybe things will change, maybe if you're just a little more patient, a little more understanding, a little easier to love, things will finally become what you've been hoping for. Because when we care deeply, we often become incredibly good at adapting. We convince ourselves that asking for less is maturity, that sacrificing our needs is compassion, that waiting indefinitely is loyalty. But over time, something begins to wear down. Not your love, but your willingness to abandon yourself. And that's the moment most people miss. Stopping yourself from settling isn't about loving the other person less. It's about finally loving yourself enough to stop negotiating your own worth. Because settling rarely begins with one big compromise, it begins with hundreds of tiny ones. You tell yourself it's okay that they don't communicate the way you need. It's okay that your needs keep coming second. It's okay that you're always the one reaching out. It's okay that you leave every conversation feeling unseen. Each compromise feels small enough to justify. But eventually, those small compromises become your normal. And one day, you realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. You've become so focused on preserving the relationship that you've stopped preserving yourself. Then something shifts, not because the other person suddenly changes, not because your circumstances become unbearable overnight, but because your relationship with yourself changes. You begin listening to your own feelings instead of explaining them away. You begin believing your own experience instead of constantly questioning it. You begin trusting the quiet discomfort you've been carrying all along. And that quiet discomfort was never your enemy. It was your wisdom trying to get your attention because your heart knows when something isn't aligned long before your mind is willing to admit it. Your body feels it: the exhaustion, the anxiety, the constant overthinking, the feeling that you're working so hard just to receive the bare minimum. These aren't signs that you're asking for too much. Sometimes they're signs that you've been accepting too little. The beautiful thing is, once you truly stop settling, there's no dramatic announcement you need to make. Your energy changes before your words do. You stop chasing people who are unsure about you. You stop explaining why your needs matter. You stop trying to convince someone to choose you because you've already made the most important choice. You've chosen yourself. And choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish, it makes you honest. Honest about the kind of love you want, the kind of friendships you deserve, the kind of life you want to build. It means you no longer confuse inconsistency with potential. You no longer mistake chemistry for compatibility. You no longer believe that love requires you to constantly betray yourself. Does that mean it won't hurt? Of course not. Walking away from what you've hoped for is painful. Releasing familiar patterns is uncomfortable, sometimes even scary. Choosing uncertainty over familiar disappointment takes courage. But there's another kind of pain that's often much heavier, the pain of staying, the pain of shrinking yourself, the pain of waking up years later wondering when you stop listening to your own heart. So if you've been waiting for some dramatic sign that it's time to stop settling, maybe this is it. Not because I'm telling you what to do, but because something inside you already knows. Maybe the moment you've been waiting for isn't a lightning bolt. It's this quiet realization that you no longer have the capacity to abandon yourself, for the possibility that someone else might finally become who you've been waiting for them to be. And that realization, quiet as it may be, can change the rest of your life. Because the moment you stop settling isn't really the moment you leave someone else. It's the moment you finally stop leaving yourself. Okay? Now go be yourself.